Hey there, and welcome to the session with Josh Schoenly. For years, I've been pronouncing this guy's name wrong. I
You're,
thought it was Schoenly.
you're not the only one, I promise you.
Yeah, and it's Josh Schoenly. Now, I have been a fan of Josh's for a long time. I've watched him contribute a lot to our industry, and I'm sure you guys probably know who he is as well. His most recent incarnation is ClientAlchemist.com. I'm on that email list, and probably a lot of you are as well. A lot of fantastic content on their blog comes out all the time, but Josh and I got introduced to each other about about a little bit, maybe over a month ago. And we got connected for the summit by a good friend of ours, Gary Elwood, who is, as you guys know, is on the summit as well. And Josh and I got to connect. We got to learn a little bit more about each other, and that was a lot of fun. And so a little bit about Josh, for those of you guys who maybe don't know, is that he got licensed in 2006, 2005, and practiced real estate for about 6 years. And then some of you may know he started a company called Reticulous with a partner, and they've sold that since. And now he started Client Alchemist last year. Josh's domain, his domain of expertise, is really helping agents sell homes, find buyers and sellers, but helping agents sell homes using digital marketing. And when I say that's his area of domain expertise, he's really committed many years to constantly learning what's working and optimizing what's working. If you guys go search YouTube for his name, you'll see an interview with him and Gary Keller at a KW event where Josh talked about his Craigslist strategy when Craigslist was hot and coming on the scene as a viable strategy. And Craigslist still works, by the way. But that just gives you an idea of how long, and that was back in 2011 or 2010, I think. So
Yeah.
it gives you an idea of just how long Josh has been constantly pursuing the craft of what works with digital marketing for agents. So with that, Josh, welcome to the Get Listing Summit.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So today what we're going to do is we're going to unpack a four-step method, a four-step process that you have for attracting come list me right now sellers, basically. And what it is that it's a way to, it's a non-traditional method for prospecting using social media. Now, social media, from my perspective and from a lot of people's perspective, gets a bad rap, right? It's like, just a waste of time. Oh, God, what am I going to do? Post cat pictures on my Facebook, whatever it is. That's oftentimes where people end up thinking about social media after trying it for a while. And that's because there's just not a lot of good systems and strategies around it. I don't feel like there is out there. But you have a specific way of doing this, a four-step process that actually freaking works, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to start unpacking that. So Let's dive right into it. But before we start unpacking, I just want to ask you, what drew you to wanting to master digital marketing? And under the umbrella of marketing and all the aspects of marketing, was it something about you as your experience as an agent? Or how was it that you just like, this digital marketing thing, I'm going to crack it?
Yeah. So it does relate back to being an active agent. And even before I was licensed, I was investing in real estate. And I was in an area where I didn't have connections. I didn't have a network. I didn't really know that many people. And so I had to figure out a way to predictably and reliably attract, get inbound contacts, because I loathed and just shuddered at the idea of making cold calls and prospecting traditional ways and knocking doors. I realized that it could work. What's that?
You and a lot of agents.
Yeah, I mean, I realized certainly it can work, and a small, I think, population, part of the population may actually enjoy that. It was something that I just refused to do, and so because I refused to do it, it forced me to find a better way. I had a great many of trials and tribulations, and many ups and downs. But through that process, I realized that what I really enjoyed more so than serving clients was learning about that process, and then teaching others how to relieve that pain for themselves. I went to college to be a teacher, and got the entrepreneurial bug after that. And it was like a perfect marriage for me in what became my passion, and then taking that passion, the thing I enjoy to doing is figuring out this digital marketing stuff, and then being able to help others alleviate that pain that I went through. Like, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this stuff. I see other people having success, but I don't want to spend all day or all morning on the phone chasing after people. And so combining that together has led to me teaching these kind of concepts and principles for the last 10 plus years. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. So let's then dive into this 4-step process. Let's open it up. Is specifically for Facebook, or is it for all social media in general? Well, I would say that as we talk through it, the most logical example for us to associate with it would be Facebook. Okay. However, these 4 steps are really principles that you could apply to other channels and other media. But the most logical... You could work on LinkedIn, for example? Yeah. Yes. Maybe not to the same degree. Okay. But they will also, they could also potentially work on Twitter. They could potentially work, Pinterest is opening up advertising. It could potentially work on YouTube. So the reason why I kind of focus in on Facebook right now is, right now, for the majority of listeners, that's the place that would be the easiest, fastest, most consistent way for the listeners of the summit here to get results. It's where, a majority of the population is spending a majority of their time online. And so I'm a huge fan of the 80-20 principle. 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your efforts. Well, if you focus there, Facebook, that's going to be your 80% return on your time and your investment. So these principles will apply almost, more broadly, but I think as we get into the nitty gritty, Facebook is probably what we'll narrow in on, as we talk through it. Got it. Okay, perfect. That makes sense. Okay, so let's start. So let's say I'm an agent and I've hired you to be my coach. Just one-on-one, you're going to coach me. So, whatever market I'm in, let's say I'm in San Diego, just for conversation's sake. So I'm in San Diego, I'm an agent, and you're going to start taking me from the feet up. So what is step number 1 in the 4-step process for me to go online and start prospecting sellers and just clients in general using social media, specifically Facebook? Yeah. So step 1 would be, we say identify. Okay. And it's getting crystal clear on who you want to attract, who you want to work with as a client. And just being okay with the fact that, in theory, as you narrow down that choice, you might be saying no to other potential business. And that's okay. We have a phrase that we say often to our members and to our community, and it's, if you try to go broad, and we're back. Sorry about that little technical difficulty, but we've got it all hopefully managed out here. Josh, last thing I heard you say was step 1 in the 4-step process was identify. And then the last thing I heard you say after that was get really crystal clear on who your target client is, because you're going to find through that process that you'll be saying no to other potential clients and business. That's kind of where we left off. So let's just start from the top with step 1 is identify. Get crystal clear on who your client is. Yeah, so let me clarify one thing out of that. And what I'm saying by saying no is you're saying no to the business that you're actively going to seek out and attract. Now, obviously, if and when through your efforts following this process, you are likely, very likely, to get clients that are outside of that audience selection that you've identified. And obviously, if it makes sense for you, you're going to take that business. But what I'm saying is getting really clear on who we're going to actively market to attract to us. So you gave the example of San Diego. We've got to, especially in a big market like that, we've got to really narrow down. And in a San Diego, it might be picking one zip code to focus in, or one neighborhood area, or a different sort of subset of the market, and just getting really focused on that. I think we had the technical difficulties before I was able to say this phrase that we have around Client Alchemist that we share with our members a lot and with our community, and that is, if you try to brand or go too broad, you will go broke. If you are focused on narrow or a niche, you'll get rich. And maybe not necessarily just financial riches, but the other thing that happens when you narrow and niche, you can go deeper in relationship and communication and service to that more narrow focus. You might be able to do things and serve the community in a way that you couldn't if you were trying to be all things to all people in all of San Diego, for example. And so, a big stumbling block or hurdle that we have when coaching our new pro members is that very thing. It's just being okay with saying no, at least for the time being, to being all things to all people in your market, and being okay with narrowing down. Now, the way that looks specifically for sellers and listings, and in this case, most often the way it looks is, number one, narrowing down the geographic area. So for example, in San Diego, it might be narrowing down to one zip code or one neighborhood. It might be, it will depend greatly on your market area. Like, we have clients who are in more rural areas, and their narrow geographic region is their entire county, because for them that is actually narrow, and their entire county may only have a population of 40 or 50,000, and that's great, and that works for them.
Got it. Okay.
So that's piece one, the geographic area. The second piece of it is other demographic information. And so one of the reasons why we love Facebook and why we recommend applying this 4-step formula on Facebook is that you can then layer on and present messages, posts, campaigns to only homeowners inside of that geographic area. So you can create marketing messages, marketing systems, marketing campaigns that will only show to, blank, insert blank, zip code, who are also homeowners. The other thing you can do, and sometimes this can go too far the other way, is you can actually use other demographic information. So you can narrow down by income, by home value, and so forth. But you can get, so there's a happy medium, right? If you're too broad or you're trying to brand yourself, that can be a negative. But if you try and go too narrow and too niche, that can also be a negative as well. And so we've got a whole process that we walk people through. And our rule of thumb is, when you're identifying your audience, and you can do this very simply in Facebook, when you're identifying your audience, we typically tell people that you want a potential reach of at least 10 to 25,000 people, and no more than, say, 50 or 100,000 people, and no less than 5,000. So we've got a sweet spot of 10 to 25. The high end, right, the fringes would be 50 to 100, and the low end fringe would be, say, 5,000. And knowing that full well that real estate is, there's no blanket way that I can prescribe for every single person on here. What we do with our company, and what I'm going to try and do, and for all of you listening right now, is give you best practices that then can lead you to asking good questions for you and your business and your market, knowing what you know about your market that we wouldn't know.
Got it. Okay.
So that's the first part of it, right? Just sitting down and getting really clear on who that audience is. Maybe, so let's dive into some examples, maybe. So let's say you're San Diego, and you select a zip code, and you select, and we know we're going after listings here, sellers, and we choose homeowners, right? That's logical.
Okay. Right.
and let's say we still get, there's 200,000 homeowners in that zip code, let's say. Well,
Okay.
you might then decide that you want to focus on baby boomers who are also homeowners, right? And we can layer that on as well. And the reason why that's so valuable and important through the next steps of this, and why this step in many ways is the most important, is that the remaining three of these steps, if you're really clear on identifying your audience and knowing who that audience is, you can craft messages and communication that cover what I call the 3 C's, which are congruent. You can create messages that are congruent to the audience. You can create messages that are compelling to the audience, and you can create consistent messaging because you understand and you know that audience, and most often when you're doing this process, you are most likely going to be a part of the audience that you're identifying.
Got it.
So,
okay.
It's more than likely if you are in San Diego, like for you, Andre, you would choose a zip code, homeowners, and then maybe you may narrow it down by homeowners who are aged 30 to 45 or 30 to 50, because you can, you understand where they're at. Or maybe it's 30 to 50 who also have kids, who married and have kids.
Got
right?
it.
And they may be at some point, depending on where they're at in that spectrum, they may be looking to upgrade, right? Trade up. And when they get later in that window, they may be looking to downsize, and that would also fit sort of the baby mentality as well. So that's step one, really. It's just getting crystal clear on that. And for some of you, it's going to be super simple, right? But for some of you, it's going to take some real thought. You're going to have to sit down and ask yourself some questions and really get clear based upon what you know about your market and what part of your market area you want more business in, and just really think about that and what makes the most sense for you. Answering the question that makes sense for you, not for what someone else is telling you should be your right answer, but really getting clear on what makes the most sense for you and your business and what you want your business to look like in the short and the long term.
So the density of population is a big factor, because the denser the population, the more you have to whittle it down if you want to get sub 50,000 or sub 100,000 reach.
Sure.
So the higher population area you're in, the more you're going to narrow it down. Speaking of which, I've run a successful lead generation campaign for a real estate agent where we were testing some of my ideas, and I was getting to use I used his business as just kind of an incubator for ideas, and he was open to using ideas to see, if something worked, he kept it. But what we did is we ran a campaign targeting moms who were expecting babies or just had babies.
Yeah.
And the whole idea was a move up situation, right? An expansion situation. And that worked pretty well. Well, just targeting that very, very finite niche. But it was in a denser area population wise, so you could reach certainly over 5,000 people.
Yeah. Well, here, I'll give another example that is not even real estate related, but maybe could be adapted to real estate along those lines. I've been involved with other businesses over the years. And at one point I had part ownership of a local based business, and we had campaigns that would run. We had a special offer, special coupon that would run to people whose birthday was either coming up or even that very day. Okay. So not only, were we targeting, a geographic area around this business, and not only could we narrow down by age and some other demographics, but you can even do some things like that. So, how would that relate to real estate? Well, you might create a message that says, happy birthday. Is it time to move? Or is it time to sell your house? That might be a little bit over the top and creepy, but you can do some really interesting things with Facebook's platform. Once you get really clear on that first step on who the audience is, you can do some really interesting and cool things that sometimes can borderline on creepy. So I guess you got to be a little bit careful there. But it's really powerful, and it really is helpful to creating those messages that are really congruent.
Well, you know what I was just thinking? You could do something like where, let's say, let's say somebody just is having their birthday. Well, it doesn't have to be necessarily their birthday, but you could target, let's say, men and women between the ages of 30 and 35. Tell me what you think. I'm just putting this out there.
Yeah.
Between 30 and 35 who are just having their birthday. So they're thinking about their age right now, currently, let's say a week before and a week after, whatever settings you can get on Facebook. But then what you target them with is a message is, the smartest real estate financial strategies for 30 to 35-year-olds in San Diego.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, but you're hitting on their age, which you're giving a little bit of a range, but you're hitting them on their birthday anyways, when they're most top of mind about their birthday.
Absolutely.
And again, that's as long as your reach isn't, like 2,000 people. But if it's, if it's significant enough, then that's a little idea right there.
That's what's so amazing about doing stuff like this. Like the ideas that come out when around other smart folks. That's fun. Absolutely. I love the idea.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So step number 1, identify, getting crystal clear on who your target client is geographically and demographically. And then I think a little bit later, we'll unpack 3 C's a little bit more. But what is step number 2 then in the 4-step process?
So step number 2 is attract. So what or how are you going to attract the audience that you've just identified? And we have a whole process for this. And we have something that we call the hierarchy of connection, which is the next step in the process, which is connection. But right now, at this step in the process, you're just trying to determine what can I create or what can I do to attract those people that I've identified. You just gave an example. You may create a report of some kind that is extremely congruent and relevant to 30 to 35-year-olds who also own a home in certain area in San Diego. And in doing so, not only are you going to create something that is extremely congruent, you're going to create a competitive advantage because you're creating something that no one else is doing. Now, we have some best practices and some things, some offers that we have for our members and for our community. In fact, one of the examples is something that we'll share with all of the listeners for free. It's called our Come List Me Seller template, where you can basically, it's a sort of almost like a fill in the blank, where you can fill in the blank with information that's relevant to your market and your audience. So this isn't about, you don't have to get super creative at this point. Andre's example was a great one, but you don't have to start there.
Right. It can be a bit overwhelming. Yeah. Report and all this stuff.
And things I think about are like what it would be interesting, valuable, entertaining, what would get their attention. And so one of the things that our pro members offer to attract the audience that they've identified is a just sold report. So a report of all the recently sold homes in their area. And that's a great sort of universal offer that anyone listening could create and offer. For years and years, and I still see a lot of people doing it, home values. So offering, get the value of my home in blank area. It still can work in some areas. In most competitive markets, it doesn't sort of work as well as it once did, which is one of the reasons why we help our folks with a slightly different offer around that, right? It kind of, the just sold offer sort of plays on our natural curiosity to want to know, like, what did the Joneses house really sell for, right? Because even though there's information readily available on the internet, not all of it's accurate. A lot of the population may not know how to find that information. And so, those would just be a couple examples. Now, we recommend that, you have to have a number of different ways to attract. So you don't just rely on one thing, but you've got to start somewhere. So you pick something to offer as a way to attract that audience that you identify. Got it.
Okay. By the way, one thing I was thinking of as you're talking, I feel like my brain probably works a little bit the same way. We start connecting all these dots and ideas. But I just want to give a little tip for everybody listening, and I also want to get your input on it. Maybe you can even maximize it. Is I know that for a lot of people, sitting on writing a new report of anything is daunting, right? Because if it's not perfect, it's the idea of the need to be perfect, right? And getting judged by the quality of work. A pro tip for that is go find a local financial planner and set up a free Zoom account, zoom.us, record them on a video interview like this, and make that the lead magnet that you run on Facebook is maybe just an idea where people just get it. Hey, I interviewed a local guy, so same people, 30, 35-year-olds, financial planner, but talking about important financial strategies. And now you don't have to come up with the content. You just interview somebody.
Yeah.
You get access to a video. And it doesn't have to be perfect. The pressure isn't on you to be perfect anymore because you're interviewing an authority and expert, right?
Yeah. And you could even use something like rev.com to get it transcribed, super cheap. And then you could pull out, okay, so this guy shared, 7 really important things. So these are the top 7 most important, financial indicators for, people ages 30 to 35.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
cool. Yeah. You said that's rev.com?
Rev.com, rev.com. It's a great, it's a transcription service. It's very affordable and they do an excellent job. We use it all the time.
Perfect.
And the turnaround time's super fast. Like you'll get stuff back in a day, sometimes the same day.
Okay, awesome. Guys, by the way, right before we go into step number 3, I just want to remind you, 1, be taking notes. 2, rewatch this session as many times as you need to, because clearly we're getting pretty granular. But also 3, understand that we're probably just Josh is probably just scratching the surface of all the things that are possible. Obviously we want you to have the principles on how to do this. But there's so much possibility here for what you guys can do with social media marketing, digital marketing, when done right, as you're clearly hearing Josh explain. So really just make sure you're re-listening to this episode probably a couple times. And as you're getting ideas, pause, write down your ideas, capture those ideas when you're hearing us talk, because then again, you can turn around and apply that for your business. So I just want to make sure that you're taking notes. Okay, so step 1, identify. Step 2, attract. Step 3 is
connect.
And
there's a diagram. Recently, I published a book outlining these 4-step process, and in the book we have a diagram that I call the hierarchy of connection. And so, if you can picture a pyramid, and what we're trying to do is work the audience that we've identified from the bottom, so for sort of the foundation of the pyramid, all the way up to the top. And so the way we do that is in the type of campaigns that we employ on Facebook. And the different levels of connection are the following. So we've got the audience that we've identified. So that's our broad audience. That's our pool of potential people. And the first level of connection is them to engage with your page. In order to implement these principles and the strategy we're talking about, you'll need a Facebook business page to do so. And again, we can't go too granular here. We're trying to give you principles, but you can Google create Facebook page. Most of you listening probably already have one in one form or another.
Right.
But the first step in the hierarchy of connection is to get them to engage with your page. So to become a fan of your page or to engage with some content on your page. The next step is to get them to some sort of inquiry. It might be that they fill out a form on your website. We have a website platform for our members that we have them drive so that people can create pipelines of new business. And so it might be simply them putting their information into what we call it pipeline pages, but some sort of landing page or something like that. It could be them messaging directly through your Facebook page, commenting on a post of some kind. It could be calling or texting, which, by the way, in the free gift that we have for you, that's the objective of that is to get people calling, texting, and messaging you, because it requires the least amount of tech. Right? You all already have a phone. Right. And you all already have the capability to receive incoming Facebook messages. Right. So all you need is the know-how to implement that. So that would be the next level. The next level after that. Sorry,
so to make sure I didn't skip anything. So engage with the page.
Yep.
Get them to inquire, and then there could be a text message, or did I just miss a step?
No, well, so inquiry can be any. I mean, it could be any.
You could say on a Facebook post, like, text me for this, or call or text me about whatever it may be that your call to action is.
Right.
Got it.
So
okay.
the first level is sort of a more passive engagement, right? They might like the page, they might react to a post or do something like that. The next level that we call is sort of them taking the next
right, opting in for something, their email,
opting in for something.
Right.
Yeah, taking some action that requires them to leave the environment.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
It's more active on their part.
Got it. Okay.
And then the next part is simply that is that process of they've inquired and now we're conversing with them. I'm foreshadowing again because that's our step 4, to the point where they become a client, and or the very top of what we call our hierarchy is an advocate. And an advocate is someone who's likely been a client and now actively referring you other clients. And so when we work with our folks and we implement this process, we have specific campaigns and strategies to work people up that rung. Now, the reason why we're given the gift that I'm giving is I'm including that is implemented correctly. It can sort of address all of this hierarchy,
sure,
as long as you're also layering on these steps, right? You're identifying and going narrow and niche with your audience. You can use the process to attract and do the connecting. And then our next step in the process.
Wait, before we go there, I just want to tell people where to go and get the free gift, actually.
Yeah, perfect.
So let's unpack this a little bit, just because the gift makes so much sense for step number 3. And what that is your 3-part come let me sellers, come list me sellers template. And before we tell people where to go, where they can go and get that for completely free, that's a free gift from you to everyone here on the Get Listing Summit. Explain just really briefly again what that will do for them and what they can get out of it.
Basically, it's a sort of a fill-in-the-blank process that you can use to create as it relates to Facebook, to create a post on your page that you can then go out and after you've identified who you're attracting, go out and attract and connect with the most motivated and likely to list clients in your market or potential clients in your market, so that you can get into meaningful conversations with them via text, phone call, or messaging, and do it very quickly. I mean, we've had members that have implemented this process, and within an hour or two have been in conversation with potential sellers. Now, does that happen every time? Absolutely not. But if you consistently implement this template, you use it, once or twice a month, and you follow the entire process, you're going to see results. You're going to get that most motivated segment of your market to raise their hand and say, yes, I need your help in one form or another.
Got it. I was interviewing Chris Suarez, and I forget, again, he had a great quote that that was somebody else's quote, but I forget the guy who he referenced it to. So, but the quote was, losers have goals, winners have systems. Right? And what I love about
I feel like I read that recently too.
He said it was in one of Tim Ferriss's books.
Yeah, that's why I know it. Yeah, it's in this one.
Yeah, is it the new one, the Titans book?
Yeah, it's in this
one. I'm thinking about getting that. Anyways, there's a guy in there. There's a quote. There's a quote from a guy in there. What I love about the gift that you're giving away here is that it basically systematizes, helps to systematize it for people. So guys, right before I tell you where to go, the value of this, beyond just it working and coming from years and years of optimization, is also that, like, you're not going to sit at your computer and get that writer's block, brain freeze. What do I say? Oh, but will it work? I don't think I can come up with the right thing. It's no point in spending money on it or doing anything or putting time into it. No, it freaking works. Yeah. But you got to show up and do it every day consistently. Okay. So where you would go and get that is go to ClientAlchemist. That's Josh's website, ClientAlchemist.com/summit. Okay. ClientAlchemist.com/summit, and you will get that gift for free. I would write down the URL, and I would avail yourself of that gift as soon as possible. When the session is over, go get it, grab it, have it, and freaking use it. It works. Okay. And it's basically filling, like Josh was saying, it's filling the blank basically for you. So it's a guided process, and then you'll know that you're following a process that works. And I know for me personally, sometimes doing something is like, I actually don't mind being consistent with things. It's sometimes you doubt whether the thing you're doing consistently is going to work, right? And it's like, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Well, this works, okay? So just take it and use it, especially if you're interested in generating clients online and if you're trying to get away from traditional prospecting methods, if that's something you're trying to get away from. So, okay, perfect. Again, clientalchemist.com/summit. And thank you for that, Josh.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure.
All right, so step 1, identify. Step 2, attract. Step 3, connect. Step 4 is?
Converse.
Converse.
I'm really passionate about this because I feel like conversion and converting is like is something that a lot of people focus on. There's a lot of talk about that from coaches and trainers and gurus.
Again, we win the war against the gerbils. They're trying to mess with the internet, but they will not succeed. Where there's a will, there's a way, right? Yeah. Okay, so steps number 1, 2, and 3 were identify, attract, and connect. And then just to really quickly actually recap the pyramid, it was engage with the page. Then it was get them to inquire, some sort of inquiry where they start coming out of coming closer to you.
Yep.
And then the third layer is conversing, which I also labeled as where it's kind of becoming a two-way conversation, right? Conversing, it's back and forth. And then the top of the pyramid is advocate, where they become an advocate. So step number 4 is converse. Let's start unpacking that.
So I specifically and strategically use that word converse instead of convert because think about it this way. This is a great question to ask yourself. How do you want to be perceived by potential clients in your market? Do you want to be perceived as the pushy salesperson, or do you want to be perceived as the servant?
Okay.
And if we will focus on having conversations versus what can I say to convert this person into a client, it's a little like change of mindset, right? It's a little paradigm shift that can make all the difference in the world if you really embrace it. So what we talk about is just getting better at listening and asking questions and focusing on serving first, not thinking about when you're on the phone or you're looking at your text or you're about to send an email, not thinking about, what is the magic phrase that I can say that will get this person to sign on the dotted line, but rather based upon the information I know that they've shared, what question might I ask that would reveal how I can better serve them? And if you do that, not only are you going to change your perception with that individual, but you will create so how likely, if you are badgered, right, into a transaction, right? If you were either consciously or unconsciously sort of manipulated into buying or selling a home or any transaction, it's not very likely that you're going to go out of your way to refer other people to go through that same
to that person,
right? Yeah. But if you really not just act like you or talk the talk of wanting to be a servant, but if you actually show them through your actions, through your words, through your emails, through your text that you are being a servant, they are much more likely to go out of their way to refer your business. They will actually, when they're at social functions and parties, they'll go on the lookout, like listening for people talking about real estate and want to tell them about the experience that they had with you. And so again, other methods work. There's no question, right? But for me, I just was never comfortable with, mastering some script or objection handler so I could manipulate that person into the result I wanted. And so this methodology, this way of thinking, and just a little paradigm shift, although for some of you, it may mean that you might lose some business in the short run, but I promise you, in the long run, you will win if you take this approach. Because when you do this, not only are the people that do business with you more likely to refer you business, but even the people that don't do business with you, maybe they decided they weren't going to sell, or they never were really going to sell, but they were interested in the information, the offer that you put out there to attract them. If you treat them like a real person, right? Like you would a relative, if you listen to them, if you ask meaningful questions, if you affirm back what you're hearing from them, even those people, even the people that don't, aren't ready to become clients today, they're going to go out of their way to refer business. And they'll say things like, hey, I didn't even work with this guy, but they seemed like such a great person. I imagine he'll take great care of you. And that's what you want. I mean, if you really want, if you want to have a great reputation online and offline, if you want to build a business where, we've got this predictable, scalable way to bring in new business, but then we've also got this natural back-end business that comes in because you positioned yourself and you were a servant to those clients that you brought in with this process. I mean, that's a beautiful place to be. That's a business that can be sustained over time versus one where you're always looking for that next target, for lack of a better term.
Right. Okay. It is powerful what you're saying, that slight little nuances in word shifts can end up creating dramatically different behaviors and subsequent outcomes.
Yeah.
That is so true. And I've had repeated interviews here on the summit where a point was made about just your thinking around something, right? Your approach around something, your intentionality around something. And I also do know, and I believe, and I was experienced this when I was a real estate agent, is that in our industry as real estate agents, there's oftentimes some pretty old school negative type wiring that we're imprinted with, especially if you don't plug into a good source of information right out of the gate, or a good source of coaching or training or mentorship, whatever it may be. Where it's that kind of stuff that's a lot more pushy, and just not doesn't have a servant's mindset first, right? Yeah. And again, it makes you end up feeling like a slime. It can end up making you feel like a slimy salesperson. And as soon as you start feeling that about it yourself, then that's going to come out in your energy. It's going to come out in your self-belief, right? Your self-confidence in what you're doing. I really do think it's all just kind of downhill from there, I think, for most people.
Yeah, and the other thing that will happen is, although it seems, until you actually embrace this idea and you start implementing it, it seems counterintuitive. But when you do that, you become more attractive in the eyes of the prospect. Because in every sales situation, someone is chasing the other, essentially. Like someone is pursuing the other one. And you want to position and create a business where you are being pursued and not vice versa. Because if you're always pursuing, you're going to be real tired. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, next week. But if your business is built around you constantly pursuing, it gets old because you're only one person. And even if you have a whole team of people, it's still a team of people versus the entire potential audience that you identify in step one of this process, and reverse engineering how you can get them pursuing you and sort of chasing after you. It's just a much better sort of relationship and setup to have short-term and long-term.
Right. Yeah. You're living in a much happier world, right?
Yeah.
Talk me through any possible ideas of, so step number one is identify, right? Then attract, then connect, and then converse, right?
Yeah.
Step number two, attract. When you're posting something on Facebook, for example, to then use as a magnet for attraction, right? As a mechanism for attraction. How can we apply principle number 4 of conversing to convert, right? Not converting. How can we apply the idea of what you're just talking about right now, where you said, instead of focus on having a conversation, instead of focusing on what can I say to convert them, is there a way to apply that intelligently to step number 2, attract, in terms of
Yeah,
how you actually write your Facebook posts?
Yeah. So the most logical way, or the one that jumps out for me that we teach most frequently, is by telling stories in your post.
Okay.
And
what are you going to tell stories about?
Story,
your cat drinking milk, or a house you sold, or what?
A house you sold, but not telling the story about it centered around you, right? But about the client. And you can tell a story in a sentence or two, right? I'm not talking about writing a book. So, for example, we have a local client, real estate client that we work with. They're sort of a private client of ours. I know them. They're a great group, and good people. And we implemented what you can find in our free gift for you, the Come List Me template. We implemented that this week for them, and have already gotten a bunch of responses. The story that we told in that example was simply in one sentence. This house sold in less than 48 hours with 5 total offers.
This house sold in less than 48 hours with 5 offers.
Right. So it's not inherently saying like I'm great, right?
Got it.
Although it is sort of implying.
Right. Implied greatness, implied bragging, but you're still talking about the client too, kind of.
Yeah. And then we transition to asking a question and call to action. So now I'm giving away some of our free gift here, but that's great because the whole purpose of this is to help. But so we told a story, we asked a question. Who do you know that's thinking about selling? And again, this is a little thing, it makes a big deal. We didn't say, are you thinking about selling? We said, who do you know, right? So it's like less pressure, right? It's more low key. Now they might be thinking of selling, but we're also opening up like a loop in their mind. Like it gets them thinking, all right, I'm not thinking about selling, but you know what? So-and-so down the street mentioned that they were thinking about selling. And then in that case, in the case of this, the call to action was simply, if you know somebody, give us a call or text us at this number.
Got it.
Now you can get more elaborate with your stories. Now, so I have examples where they tell very specific stories. I have examples of clients that have their clients, so agents who have their clients whose homes they sold tell their story via video.
Got
it. You implement this our process with that. Incredibly powerful. Now, do you have to do it with video? No, but if you can, and if they've got a good story, right? Like, I don't know, maybe they tried to sell their house before and they couldn't, or maybe it sold for more than they ever thought and faster than they ever thought. Whatever the case may be, it's helping them, and your job is to help them with the story and then turn that into an opportunity for you to leverage that to attract and connect with the audience that you identify.
Got it. Okay. So let's just quickly recap the 3 C's of communication, or 3 C's of messaging, as you call them. And I think you've really actually kind of hit on a lot of those things just as you described that process of using stories. But the 3 C's were congruent, compelling, and consistent, right here in my notes. So maybe kind of just like take that from the top, and maybe you can even reuse some of the posts you just talked about, but maybe just give one little nugget per what does it mean to be congruent? What does it mean to be compelling? And what does it mean from your perspective to be consistent? Are you saying consistent in the type of stories, or consistently posting? Like flesh these things out a little bit for me. So congruent is what?
Congruent, to me, this is the most important of the 3. They're all important, but this is the most important because if the message that you're creating and the audience you're putting in front don't match up, it doesn't matter how compelling or consistent you put them out there, right?
Got it.
If your messaging, I'll use an extreme example, but if you're putting out messages about, let's make it real estate specific. So if you let's say, and this won't even be a listing, but this will be the best way that off the top of my head that's coming out. If you tell a story about a first-time home buyer, right, and you help them buy their home and you got them this special financing, and you put that in front of, baby boomers in this zip code who are homeowners, like it doesn't make any sense, right? Okay. Now, that is an extreme example, but we often see where it doesn't have to be that extreme for it to become incongruent and confusing to the person, because a confused mind will always say no, right? So if somebody sees something and they're not sure if it's for them, they're moving on, because we're inundated with messages, right? So we've got to make it as clear as possible that this is something that they should pay attention to, right? That this is something that is of value to them. They shouldn't have to like search and try and figure that out. You've got to make it clear as day to them. How do you do that? Well, you do that in the text that you use, the name of your page and the text you use in your post. So for example, we talked about one of the offers that our folks use to attract and connect with folks is just sold. So you can get a free weekly list of all just sold homes in your blank neighborhood, right? I live in Enola, Pennsylvania. So get a free weekly list of all homes that recently sold in your Enola neighborhood, right? Well, when we create that post around that, we're going to make it crystal clear that if you're in Enola, if you own a home in Enola, this is for you. And we do that by calling that out in the actual ad. Hey, do you own a home in Enola?
Got it.
You might want to check this out, right? So it's a simple thing, but we see time and again, it's a little thing that until you understand how important it is, you might forget. One of the things that we do for our pro members is marketing critiques. And I would say every other one, there's something that's not congruent. And that can that is like, the ultimate little hinge that'll swing a big door. Like if your message isn't congruent, it is not going to work no matter how compelling or consistent you post. So that's congruent. Compelling is it something that they're going to be interested in, right? So the just sold offer, like my wife, we talk about selling our home and moving, and I don't know how serious we are, but we've talked about it on and off for 7-8 years, right? I mean, we've been in this home a long time. We have a lot of kids. It's a big house, but we maybe could get a bigger house, whatever.
Right.
We're not necessarily serious right now, but that offer is compelling to her, even as just someone who's just, kind of just tertiarily thinking about it, right? Because it's interesting. It's compelling. Like she wants to know what so-and-so's house sold for down the street.
Right.
And she would love to get a weekly update or a monthly update or whatever the case may be of all the homes that sold in our neighborhood, just because she's nosy like that. I'll just call it. I mean, she knows, I'm not saying anything that she doesn't know that I already think about her, but
right. She wants to stay informed, man. She just wants to stay informed.
Right, exactly. And so stories, right, going back to what we talked about, sharing stories done, composed correctly are almost always compelling. I mean, if you look at
it would be compelling your wife how a house in Laguna Niguel or a neighborhood name, if you're targeting by neighborhood and she lives in the same neighborhood, to say how this house in Laguna Niguel or whatever, Stony Brook sold in 48 hours with 5 offers. Like, talk about being compelling, right?
Exactly.
Or
so now you're taking somebody who was kind of serious about selling to taking the point of reaching out and connecting with you because, they may not have realized how hot the market was, or they may not have realized, how much the home is now worth, and so forth. So,
the one thing that I'm getting out of this that I'm kind of sensing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, when people I think sometimes when people think of internet marketing, or at least maybe with me, because I've spent so much time in it, is when you think of internet marketing, you think of leads, I feel like I automatically tend to think in terms of hundreds and thousands of leads, right? And if I don't have that, it's not successful. Well, with this, it sounds like the strategy is a lot more getting a real high quality group of 10, 20, if maybe even 30 leads, right? Like, well, I don't know what the exact number is, but you're not looking for hundreds of leads out of these campaigns. You're looking to attract those people that your congruent, compelling messaging is so attractive to them that they want to talk to you, right? And then you're talking to people who are super interested in that information.
Yeah, and we have different kinds of campaigns with different objectives. We do have, so for example, if we employ that just sold campaign, that would be for the purpose of building a pipeline of business. So we would expect to get a lot more connections with those people than the number of calls and texts we would get with people who grab the free gift, the Come List Me template, would implement. However, we would see a much higher percentage of the people that call or text are going to turn into a client. It's exponentially higher than someone who just fills out a form and gets into your database. Now, best is to marry them together, right? And so that goes along with the third C, consistent, which is if you are consistently implementing a variety of different types of campaigns, a variety of different ways of attracting and connecting, that's how you can that's the rising tide that will raise all the ships. That will help every one of your marketing efforts will sort of get better and better over time through consistent right action, right? And you hinted at it earlier with the quote. It's not actually just your thought. It's not just taking action. It's right. It's like knowing that I'm doing the right things, right?
Right. Having confidence and certainty, knowing that what I'm doing will actually work if I just show up and do it over a long enough period of time.
Right. And so you may, so implementing the Come List Me template idea, the first time you do it, you may not get the response that you had hoped or dreamed of. But if you consistently implement it over time, you are going to see results. It's virtually impossible. And if you aren't, then you're missing one of the three C's. That's simply it. It's either not congruent with the audience, the way you're crafting it is not very compelling, or you're simply not doing it consistently. It really, that's the troubleshooting part of it if you're doing this.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, there you have it, guys. Man, we've really unpacked it. We've dug deep. So the 4-step process is identify, attract, connect, converse. And then the 3 C's of communication are congruent, compelling, consistent. You like that? I'm remembering that without even looking at my notes.
You weren't even looking at your notes.
And then the pyramid. Let's see if I can remember the pyramid. The pyramid is get them to engage with your page, get them to inquire in some way or opt in for something that you're offering. Then it's converse, which is like two-way communication. You're communicating with them back and forth. And ultimate goal is to get them, just to text you or call you. That's the best. And that's low friction for you because you already have it. And then the top is advocate.
Right. And advocate. In between there would be client. So
got it. Okay. Client, advocate. Client,
and if you've done that the right way, you've got a higher likelihood of them becoming an advocate, someone who's going out of their way to try and refer you business.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Guys, clientalchemist.com/summit to get the 3-step template for Come List Me Now sellers. Okay. It's a fill in the blanks, follow along type deal. You've heard solid gold here from Josh in terms of unpacking how to do it. I'm sure you've been taking notes. Re-listen to this session. If you have a free ticket, it's up for 48 hours. So get the information in as much as you can. Otherwise, you can go get an all-access pass and get permanent access to this. Couple things. Josh is actually coming back to do a round number 2. And we're going to talk really briefly. We're talking about a 5-step. What was it? It's a 5-step process that you have, right?
5X formula for seller lead success. So specifically, like we talked about, just sold leads. So a formula for it's kind of marries a little bit of everything that we talked about on this session, but then very specifically following these steps so you can work somebody up that pyramid and turn it into a listing and ultimately, hopefully, multiple transactions.
Perfect. So that's going to be in round number 2. So a must attend. Don't miss that, especially if you want to maximize what you've learned here even more so. And also for those of you who have an all-access pass or going to get an all-access pass, Josh has actually contributed even more value to the summit, and he's giving away something that they normally sell at Client Alchemist. It's the seller referral black box, right? And they normally sell that for $97, and they're giving that away for free for anybody who holds an all-access pass because they're supporting the cause of the summit, which is that we're giving back half of all access pass sales to the orphanage Boys Town in the Philippines. So you're giving them it completely for free. And if you can avail yourself, well, you're availing yourself of this interview, obviously, make sure you show up for the second interview too, round number 2 with Josh. And then if you get the free template and you get seller referral black box for just the cost of the all access pass, you are definitely going to be set in terms of being able to effectively market online, in terms of being able to attract clients online. I think you're going to have everything A through Z that you need. So, Josh, with that, thanks so much for showing up. It's been fun battling the internet gerbils. The good guys won today.
Yeah.
And I look forward to round number 2 with you soon.
Me too, man. I appreciate you and all you're doing here.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.